Hello, everybody. I'm Kristian Salinas, the Artistic and Executive Director of QFest, the Houston International LGBTQ Film Festival, now in its 25th and sadly final year. I'd like to thank our sponsors, our presenting sponsor, Homelight, our longtime sponsor, the John Stephen Kellett Foundation, and of course, our program sponsors, the Hollyfield Foundation and the Houston Arts Alliance. And finally, our media sponsors, Spectrum South and Houston Media Source, who is making this panel possible. We have an esteemed group of wonderful women directors, 4 of which are from Houston, and 1 a guest of our festival. I shall start with Cady McClain. She's director of a featured film in this year's festival called Seeing is Believing, Women Direct. She is a 3-time Emmy Award winner in 3 categories and is perhaps best known to many of you out there as Dixie from All My Children. And now I'd like to also introduce my fellow Houstonians, starting with Michelle Mower, an accomplished writer, director, producer, whose first film was Preacher's Daughter, starring Andrea Bowen, and who has a long-term deal with Lifetime. I also like to introduce Jenny Waldo, who I have known for many years from our days at the Southwest Alternate Media Project. Jenny is a film professor, as well as a writer, director, and producer, and her first feature film, The Acid Test, will be premiering at the end of October at 2 film festivals simultaneously, one of which is the Austin Film Festival. And now for my dear friend and mother of my child, Stephanie St. Sanchez. Stephanie is a DIY, no-budget filmmaker whose aesthetic focuses on the lesbian Latina experience. She is a multi-grant awardee and is the founder of Senorita Cinema, a festival dedicated to supporting and exhibiting the work of Latina filmmakers across the US and the world. And finally, our wonderful friend and colleague, Mel Petersen, who also is a writer, director, and producer, and has been also a recipient of awards here in town. She produced, wrote, and directed a play called Space Junk, which featured live action drones during the production. So welcome, everybody. And now I'd like to start with Cady. So I wanted to say I love your documentary. I think it's an enormous challenge to have as many people as you had in your film to focus on, so many different voices and to make it coherent and inspiring. So congratulations on that. That is not easy. It's just not easy.
That's true. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
And I feel like, when I saw it, you accomplished the challenge of capturing so many different perspectives from a variety of women who were at different points in their career with very different experiences. And you allowed each of them to speak very honestly, very openly. There seemed to be this environment where they felt comfortable sharing with you. And I think that really lent to the experience of seeing that film and really appreciating and understanding the challenges that women face in the field of directing. So I want to ask you, as someone who has made it their goal to become a director, you took directing classes, I believe, at AFI, among other places. What did you gain from talking to all of these women? What did you walk away with from that experience?
Well, my goal, I'm going to just roll back a little bit because you really encapsulated so much of my original intention with the film. And my original intention with the film was to be able to give any filmmaker, of any female identifying filmmaker especially, of any age, race, color, creed, sexual identification, a place where they could find someone who was just a little like them, so that it would give them an in to feeling like their voice was important and that their story was needed. Because I found that women's narratives were very limited, and especially, the amount of experiences that women have are very varied. They're wide and varied, and they tend to be limited down into like little simple lanes. And of course, I know this in part because of the disparity between my actual life as a woman and my life as an actor on soap operas, which back in the day was considered to be the woman's medium. And here is where women's stories can be told. So I think there's a possibility that my sort of visual familiarity and the fact that I've been in show business since I was a kid was a kind of a comfort zone for a lot of the women that I spoke to. And then because I've had so many years in show business, I was able to reach a vast array of women. And that was the goal. So if you wanted to make a music video, or if you wanted to just make commercials, some women don't want to make, narrative films. That's not their goal, to be a great independent filmmaker or even a studio filmmaker. Some just love making, shorts, or some people do love the independent world. And so I also wanted to give that opportunity for them to say, oh, what field, what particular genre do I want to work in? What resonates to me? And so that was sort of like, those are two of just or maybe three of the layers that I was approaching the film with, in terms of weaving together those stories. The other was that I didn't really want to focus on the obstacles. I wanted to focus on how to overcome the obstacles. I wanted to show what really great leadership looks like. And these just happen to be women who are leading. So men could also watch the film and go, you know what? I don't like the way that looks. I don't want to be that kind of leader. I want to be that kind of leader. And women could also say, we can lead the way in terms of representing what great leadership looks like. And a big part of that is listening, but it's also being very clear about what you want. And I love that about Leslie Linka Glatter, that was her first, she was the first person to really talk about that, like know what you want, be able to be clear and communicate what you want. And I'm very excited, as you guys all probably know, that she is the new head of the DGA, which is the president of the DGA, which is so exciting. I was just like, wow, the second woman president ever of the DGA. So that's very exciting. And I'm sure that's going to bring more opportunities for all kinds of women and all kinds of female-driven stories and characters.
That is a wonderful development. And thank you for sharing that. That is wonderful. She was certainly, what I loved about her was she was very unafraid and just really took on the challenges. She didn't shy away. I really agree with you that she is a guiding light for other women, and not just women, for men who want to get in the industry. She really is. She's quite somebody. I really loved her. One thing I see happen, certainly working in a gay and lesbian film festival, is that directors oftentimes can be, typecast, if you will, into directing only certain kinds of projects. Gay directors, especially if they're not white men, will often be assigned gay projects. And that seems to be the case, I think, for women directors across the board. Perhaps Cady and Michelle, you probably can speak most directly to this. Have you felt that there were at times that you were being limited in what you could direct? And Stephanie, you too, like being a Latina, did you ever feel like that's all people saw you as, and that you may not have a broader voice. Do you feel those limitations ever being placed upon you?
Well, I'll just start off and very quickly, and then I'd love to hear what Stephanie and Michelle have to say on this as well. And I also just want to say I'm just so honored and pleased to be on such a fantastic panel with you all and Jenny. And you're just such really impressive filmmakers and women with incredible careers and visions. And so I'm looking forward to listening to you and hearing and learning from you. So just want to say that. And in terms of being limited, I mean, I feel like, in growing up as an actor, and I've always been told what I can't do. I've always been told this is where you fit and this is what you can't do. And so I think it's just really been my own determination to sort of say, like, I'm just going to ignore that. I'm just going to ignore that. And I'm going to drive forward what my vision is for this story, or what story it is I want to tell. Because when I try to make myself fit what they, or what some, person or organization wants me to be, I'm very unhappy. I just find myself, and then now I'm old enough that I'm just like, I just can't do it. I'm sorry. I can't do it. It's just not my jam, man. It's just no spark is going off. I got no love for that, but I do have love for this, and I think that's part of, what I try to do with other women is try to validate their spark and say, that spark is everything and you are allowed to have it. And I cannot wait to see what you do with it. And just bring it on, because we need you. We need that unique voice and that spark that comes directly from you.
I agree. I mean, I feel like for me, my first film sort of set the stage, if you will, for, how my career would unfold over the next now 11 years. Wherein we made an indie film that was sold to Lifetime. We made the film in 2010, but it was sold to Lifetime in 2012. Ended up being the highest rated movie on the network for the entire year, and launched an entire franchise of movies and a reality show. so that was not very many people could say they created a franchise on a network. But at the same time, it did, somewhat put me into, sort of a niche that, I've been very grateful for, that I have that work and that I have those connections. I will clarify, I don't actually have a deal with Lifetime. I just have a good relationship with them, that if I bring a project to them, then they look at it, they want to see what I'm doing, and they support me as a filmmaker, and they support my as a screenwriter and as a director. And, and I'm really fortunate that I've been able to build that relationship, and it's, they're a really great company to work for, and to work with. But, I'm also an indie filmmaker. I make films, like in 2018, I shot an indie film called The Never List, which was not on Lifetime. It was theatrically released back in December, right in the height of COVID. And all of that. So, it wasn't the ideal timing, but certainly in my when I was growing up dreaming about being a movie director, having my movie released in the middle of a pandemic was not part of the dream, but it happened. And I was very grateful that, that I was able to even get the film released in that many theaters at all, frankly. And then now, of course, it's on VOD. And it's a film I'm very proud of. And so I want to be able to make more varying types of films, and not just be sort of, put in a box as a filmmaker. And but I will say it's easier to get projects greenlit that are, for, commercial and for a specific network than it is trying to get a film greenlit that's, no distribution attached. It's, it's an indie film, that kind of thing. So, but that doesn't mean I don't keep trying. I always keep trying to get those stories told, right? And And, I've just been really, really blessed, the last, even before I went into making movies full time, being able to work here in Houston and being such a integral part of the film community in Houston and in Texas, and building a lot of really incredible relationships. It's interesting because when I grew up in Texas, here in Houston, there was very few, not just women filmmakers, but just filmmakers in general to look up to and say, oh, look what they're doing. I can do the same thing, and when I grew up, I had to go to the library to learn about screenwriting, and I had to go to the, cinema to learn filmmaking. There was just not a whole lot of opportunities, and being able to sort of help be a part of changing that dynamic in Houston, where more people who were interested in learning the craft of telling stories through this medium had opportunities that I didn't have growing up. And through my work with Swamp, Southwest Alternate Media Project, I was able to do that for 8 years. And then eventually segued into my own, career as a filmmaker. So, I've been very, very blessed to have the success that I've had. And I'm, really excited to, get this next movie started, that we start on Wednesday. And I just it's been kind of a crazy, my first movie to do during the pandemic. And it's been rough. I'm not going to lie, but it's, it's the, this is how it is. We got to keep forging ahead, right? Keep forging ahead and getting those stories told. So yay, let's make a movie.
I support you, Michelle. You can do it.
Thank you, Mel. I love you.
For myself, I will say this as a DIY filmmaker that I'm very my aesthetic is lo-fi and retro, and I have the
and badass.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I have the pleasure of doing whatever the fuck I want. And that's really nice. So having the, I don't really have to, I doubt that my phone would ring anyway for a Adam Sandler project or anything of that nature, because I'm not really on anybody's radar very much. So being, I guess, if you want to say pigeonholed, or if I'm going to be stuck telling stories about Latinas, I'm okay with that. I really like doing it. I'm really happy here. And there's still so many stories, that's why I do the Senorita Cinema, as what Cady, we were talking about, having the festival experience, is that you are around people that understand your triumphs and your struggles. I mean, female filmmakers, the same thing happened with Latina filmmakers, is almost like with female filmmakers, is that a lot of the times when you're in the room with your male contemporaries, they're surprised that you know how to talk shop, and you have to fight for, your place at the table. But when you're around women filmmakers or Latina filmmakers, there's plenty of room and there's plenty of food, and there's plenty of talk and support, I think, and there's room for everyone, I think, with that. So that said, I think that there's plenty of stories out there, and it's just wonderful to be able to have that support of a community that is, I say this a lot, the tu sabes moment. When you see that, when you recognize that person you're talking to about film, that they have the same love and experience in their own way, to carry that torch, the authentic feelings. It's sort of there's a career path of, a lot of it's luck, definitely it's craft and talent for sure, but you keep plugging away. You have to. So, got a million of them. Just give me a chance.
It's interesting because when I was, up and coming filmmaker, there were so few women directors to really look up to and sort of like, follow their path, and even, there's just so few. And now there's a lot more, mostly in the TV episodic space. And a lot of these filmmakers are friends, people that I know personally, who I could always, hey, let's have lunch and talk shop, or, let's just hang out and not talk shop, grab drinks, so I see things improving slowly. But there's certainly a lot more, there's a lot of room for more women to make their mark, especially behind the camera. So I feel like it's so important that this documentary that Cady made is, really helps. It's actually one of the few documentaries on the subject that was directed by a woman. So
isn't that incredible?
What's that?
Isn't that amazing? I was like, I think it's just two. It's just two.
I think so. So it's a little ironic, but at the same time, very indicative of kind of like what's been happening. It's like, yay, rah, rah, women. And, but it's still men driving the narrative. And the more women we get behind the camera, I to this day, I just had lunch with the actress that I'm working with on this next movie. And she said, like, I'm the second female director she's ever worked with. Still after 11 years of doing this, and with all the progress that I think women have made behind the camera, especially in the last several years, it's still, like getting those. Invariably, when I make a film, I get that comment, like, you're the first or the second or the third female director. Like, it's notable. And I'm looking forward to the day where it's not even mentioned.
Yeah. I feel like when I first started out, which at this point is now over 20 years ago, I had an internship when I was in college on the Paramount lot, and then ended up going to USC for film school. And when I came out there, I really hated the term female filmmaker or women's film, and the women's film. As much as I love and respect Jane Campion and and Agnes Varda and all of these amazing women, there are so many of what was quote unquote women's films that I would go and watch and be like, this does not represent my experience in the world, and I was always a tomboy, and I was like, I want to be the next Quentin Tarantino, like that, and then there's also, to a certain degree, a certain amount of unpacking of my own kind of culture, like the things that the subliminal stuff that you just kind of regurgitate, and it really wasn't until I left LA and was pregnant with my first child where I started really realizing the ceiling that I was kind of hitting, and I was kind of like, well, I can't really get production work right now because I'm pregnant and nobody's going to want to hire me to be on set. And I can certainly do my own stuff. And I shot while, carrying a year-old child, nursing a year-old child and pregnant. And I shot a documentary during that time, and with my kid strapped to my back. So, I know it's possible, but and I know it's ridiculous, and that just kind of that experience of kind of hitting this moment as a woman, or in my kind of female body that I hadn't really experienced before, because I was much more kind of masculine, aggressive type. I liked being the only girl in the room, like, to me, I had more guy friends than girl, it was just like, I felt comfortable in those spaces. And so I didn't quite see that I was actually perpetuating, to a certain extent, some of the sexism, and because, I didn't want to talk about makeup or purses or shoes. Like, who wants to talk about that? Like, not me, and right. And there are other people that do. Like, my husband has a friend, and they were a colleague, and like every time we get together, she just loves Sephora and is constantly talking about it. And I'm like, I need to get out of the room right now. Like, I need somebody else. And I'm trying, but it just was really uncomfortable. I was so uncomfortable with my femininity as a child. And that was, part of, being a riot girl and fighting the patriarchy in the 90s and all that stuff. But it was really that once I kind of hit that milestone as a woman, that I started really unpacking some of the stuff that I was carrying with me kind of culturally. And I mean, luckily kind of, and Joanna Kern says this in the movie, like, luckily my dad was just like, you can be whatever you want to be. So, I mean, I really thought I could be whatever I wanted to be. And then all of a sudden I was like, well, wait a minute. I can't. Like, I mean, not that I can't, but it's certainly not as easy as I thought it was going to be. And just because of how I present, you know, of how I walk into the room. And so it's been really interesting because in the last few years, I have taken on that kind of moniker of being a female filmmaker. Like, I've chosen it as a political statement. And like Michelle was saying, I hope one day, because I agree, it shouldn't matter. It's just about different perspectives and what you bring to the table. And I think some of the things wrapped up in some of these discussions, it perpetuates kind of a toxic masculinity, which doesn't need to exist anymore either. But it just, until that day comes, I'm going to stand by this female filmmaker, and I'm going to make the films that I want to make. And they're going to be, you know, my kind of female films, and hopefully other people will like them too. You know? So.
Well, you know, Jenny, you touched on something that I wanted to ask those who have children. And don't worry, Mel, I have a question for you specifically, but I didn't realize that you were shooting that film with your child strapped to your back. I had no idea, but I don't think I knew you as well back then. But wow.
Oh, this was back. Yeah, I was shooting. This was early in my days, kind of early pre-slump when I first got here. Mm-hmm. And I was doing a documentary because my background is actually in documentary. Mm-hmm. And I was working with a group headed by midwives that were kind of educating women about pregnancy. And, you know, it didn't have to be natural birth, but it was kind of a lot of the people were kind of into the natural birth scene. And they were looking for volunteers. They do this event every year. And I was like, look, you know, I could volunteer, but I can also film and give you an outreach, you know, piece of promotional material. And so yeah, I was pregnant. My kid was like 15 months old, and I was still nursing him. And I just shot this. I went around this event with a camera and shot interviews and put it together. But that was a while ago. And then I also did another one for this I did a series for this Montessori group of, again, kind of promotional stuff. And I was nursing my then second child at the time. And so I would hire a babysitter to watch her on site when I would film the different classrooms. And then I would go, she'd kind of like wave in the window and I'd go and nurse. And then, because none of my kids ever took a bottle and I was terrible at pumping. So it was just, it just didn't work for me any other way. So,
hey, Jenny, I just wanted to make a comment because you were talking about how you said, you couldn't really pursue, working on a production because you were pregnant. And then, you just sort of like fit your production around the mother, aspect of your life. Yeah. But interestingly enough, when you made Acid Test, wasn't your director of photography pregnant?
She got pregnant after.
Oh, was it after? She was pregnant.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. She got pregnant. Yeah. We've got 2 production babies off of our film. And I've had instances where I had a PA on the short that you produced about the 2 sisters. One of my friends who was helping when she was signing her emergency medical waiver, not waiver, but form, she came up to me, or I looked at it and it said that she was pregnant. I was like, what? And she was like, it's early, but I just figured in case something happens. I was like, oh, that's great. And so it wasn't a problem to have her on set, but it's just, again, it's just one of those things where it's a reality that I think it's much easier when you're dealing with women filmmakers to kind of have these conversations.
Well, my philosophy is when I was pregnant with my oldest, I was 5 months pregnant and we had already, planned this like ski vacation. And I asked my doctor, I'm like, well, can I still ski? And he's like, do you know how to ski? And I'm like, well, yeah, I can ski. And he's like, well, if you know how to ski, then you should be able to ski even if you're 5 months pregnant. So if I can ski at 5 months pregnant, I can produce.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Surprisingly, I have a quick insert with the pregnancy thing where I'm going to, not personally, but Stephanie, who was involved in my drone project, the play, we found out her wife was pregnant during the production. And so I always like to be like, well, I helped them conceive their child. You never know. Parties, great events, that creative stimulus just kickstarts out. That was their first kid. Yeah,
Thank you, Mel.
I like to advertise you, girl. And the other story I heard, which was actually on, we were talking about public access TV. This was a documentary about women in history, narrated by Lucy Lawless, who played the fabulous Xena, warrior princess. I'm a total nerd. And it was about women warriors. And they had one episode about Boadicea, who apparently was giving birth to her child on a ship at the same time that it was being attacked by British soldiers. So she actually paused her pregnancy or birth to go up on deck, fight the soldiers, win, and then go back down and have her kids. So, what women can do.
It's impressive. That's impressive. Yeah. But I mean, in a funny way, even to look at this question as like, is a pregnancy an obstacle, or how do you overcome, or deal with the pregnancy, brings into consideration the importance of women in other positions other than directing, the hiring positions, the producing positions, and as well as how important the narrative in the writing is in terms of showing a perspective within a story. A woman that wants to make up her own mind, that is not going to quit her job because she's pregnant, that is not even a consideration, nor are the people around her even thinking that she should. I mean, this is the change that we can also propel forward in our world by adjusting the narratives that we tell in the world, whether they're and especially the commercial narratives, I think, which I'm starting to really notice that in the more commercial narratives. And I think that's really exciting. So that this isn't even going to be a question, can you do your job and be pregnant at the same time? It will be belonging to another age and another time. But I do think that that's part of the continual encouragement of the female voice or the female leader or the feminine mindset, if you will, that is inclusive of the birth-giving experience in terms of it is inclusive into our lives and woven into every aspect of, work and creativity, and not sort of cordoned off to the side as something that is, a woman's experience that she has to have outside of a working life.
Stephanie, do you want to contribute anything? I mean, you are raising 2 children.
I am. Yeah, just really quickly. And it is interesting to see how it is changing a bit, truly. So as you know, that I run the Senorita Cinema Film Festival, and that's a Latina film festival. And I've been doing that for a while. And what I've noticed is that a lot of the Latina filmmakers, they'll come out real strong with their first film. And because they have, the vim and the vigor and the drive and everything. But then you don't hear from them anymore. And it's because they started a family. And this is a traditional a Latina tradition, is that, once you have children, you take that supporting role for your man, and you raise your kids, and your adventures are over for a while, and not until your kids are a certain age are you able to get back out there, and then you find these women fighting for relevancy because, now they're not in their 20s anymore. And so their voices, have changed and they're different. And so I've been seeing that happen now. I've been doing this long enough that I've seen women who have had children and disappeared and that are now coming back. You know, and it's really nice because if you have the heart of an artist and you know, what is it? You don't pick the thug life picks you, that kind of thing. you will come back, you know. Yeah. And but because it's overwhelming to have children. It really is. It's a tough job. And especially I'm finding that out this year, having 2 now, is that it's hard to keep up with all the things you used to be able to keep up with. Now your priorities are different. It's not necessarily forced, but you know, you choose to do this thing as well. So luckily, those women that have that gone away and they're coming back, they're going to be able to pick up the slack for me for this next round of Senorita Cinema. So I think that having something like that in place, you know, community like that, like, okay, you take this time, I'll take this time, and we'll meet back together in the middle and keep this going. It's interesting to see how that's developing right now. I think that's unique to women because we're the ones that have the kids.
That is also a great director's job, is delegating out responsibilities, you know, knowing what needs to be done and delegating it out. And, you know, it sounds like, I mean, I don't have kids. Unfortunately, I can't have kids. And then I chose to not adopt because I didn't want to adopt be a single mom adopting. And of course, the kids that I want to adopt are 16 years old. So I ended up working for or with the Kids in the Spotlight, which is maybe something you wouldn't mind my mentioning. It's a really great filmmaking program for and with foster kids here in Los Angeles. So we bring in filmmakers, and I want you all to know about it because they're always looking for more female filmmakers to come in and make a one-day movie with these foster youth. And it's one of the greatest things I get to do every year. I've done 3 in a row, and it's just really, really special to take that ability as a filmmaker and then work with these youth who are just so desperate to tell their story or be a part of something, or see maybe if this is a community that they grew up in here in Los Angeles that they can be a part of and possibly make a living, whether they're a crew member or a writer, or maybe even a director, who knows, you know. It's pretty special. So that's just another aspect, if you don't have kids, as a way to loop them into your filmmaking life.
That's right.
Yeah, please don't hesitate to share that on our social media. That's wonderful.
I will, yeah.
Yeah, that's a fantastic thing. And actually, that was going to cover one of the things I was going to mention too, with public access and stuff. One of my jobs here, you know, in between being my own filmmaker, is I work on the equipment desk. And our public access station, you can join to learn how to be a filmmaker. So we teach you how to use the equipment. We teach you how to edit. And you have a ready-made distribution outlet because we're a TV station and we're the community voice. So it's like, once you get content, put it out there, and it doesn't matter what stage you start at. It doesn't matter that you didn't know how to press the on button when you came in. You will eventually learn this, and slowly your programs, your content will improve. And, you know, generally we always hope that, hey, at a certain point, you're going to move beyond us, and you're going to be, a narrative filmmaker out in Hollywood, or you're going to be, move countries, or you're going to be doing TV or whatnot. But I love that aspect of my job. Like, I really enjoy public access because, to me, that's the community's voice. And you get young people, you get older people, people from all walks of life and all communities. And it's such an amazing feeling. I kind of equate it to, like, going back to the dawn of time, where it's like you're there trying to survive, and then you're trying to make a fire to cook meal to, like, develop as a species, and then someone hands you a cooking utensil, and suddenly someone's handed you that tool that has given you life. And to me, filmmaking is like that too. You hand a camera and tools for people to create their own story, to tell their own narrative, and everybody has a story. Everyone's a director, really, But if you hand them that resource, they now have a tool to live that life. you know, to thrive. And I love that aspect. I love that you are contributing to kids being able to get into that field and being able to get a filmmaking life, a voice, as well as, you know, a way of living.
Totally. Stephanie, I wouldn't be surprised if, have you thought about maybe as your kids get older, looping them into the business? Are they going to be carrying gear and
Oh, she's already made her
crafty
premiere.
Oh, yeah,
She's already, the first one is already, she's like, are you going to the studio today, Mom? You know.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's so
I want to go. Yeah. And
As we filmed together as a baby, she brought the script into the room to hand her mother.
Wow.
For her scene.
Wow.
An innate understanding of directing, and I told Stephanie, I said, she and I are going to make films together, but first probably direct fashion runway shows in Italy.
Oh,
That's our goal.
so great.
Yeah.
Right. Hopefully they don't turn out like both my boys are I took them to sets whenever they were growing up, and they literally thought like movie sets were the most boring places on the planet.
Oh no.
So neither of them went into the film business. My oldest is a financial analyst, and my youngest is a senior studying college studying mechanical engineering. So they went into very practical, career paths, but which I'm super proud of, and I think it's awesome. But I'm sure that them coming to film sets and watching me, do take after take after take after take was like, oh, this is so boring.
Well, that is true. I often also say to people, like, you really have to love your work to be in the art industry and to be a filmmaker, because it is not easy. It's like, it is standing in line constantly, waiting for your turn, and then hurry up and go when you got your opportunity. And your opportunity always comes at the same time that a billion other things you're doing at once. So, yeah,
I think it was Vanessa Redgrave who was like telling her daughter, and like, only go in this business if you literally cannot see yourself doing anything else. Like, because it's so hard and there's so much rejection, especially if you're an actor. But even when you're not an actor, even if you're a filmmaker, I mean, it's just so much rejection and so much, just hustle, trying to get things going and flowing and moving and get some traction going with projects. It's just it's a lot of work. And then once you do, even when you do get greenlit, it's a insane amount of work, and it's not easy. And I think that that a lot of filmmakers, a lot of people growing up think they want to be whatever they think in their mind is the idea of being a filmmaker, and then when they actually do it, they're like, oh wow, this is not what I had I was expecting it to be. It's actually a lot of work. And that's when you have to make the decision, do you love it enough? Is this your passion? And is this something you just can't see yourself not doing, no matter how hard it is? And if the answer is yes, then keep going, keep being persistent with it. Otherwise, there are many, many other careers out there that are fulfilling, that will, that are even creative, that you can pursue, that aren't nearly as hard and difficult to get the funding and difficult to get the distribution and difficult at every sort of stage of the process. So, I encourage people to go out there and make some shorts and see if this is truly what they are just passionate about and just can't do anything else. And if it is, then, keep striving for that, to get that feature made and get their, those stories told.
I want to, I know we're getting close to our cutoff point, but all of you, especially you, Cady, have brought up the issue of access. And so one thing I failed to mention when we started this panel was that several years ago, I think it was in, I want to say 2012 or something like that, we had changed we had changed the way that we selected films for this festival, and we decided to go exclusively Film Freeway, just to kind of open it up to more people and to just break away from the distributors. Not that there was anything wrong with them, but it was just, I felt like we needed more voices, and we were not necessarily getting that by just going through the usual channels that we had been using for, years and years prior. And as a result of having done that, we had actually achieved a point, and Stephanie, help me remember this. I think it was almost 50% women directors that year, wasn't it? It wasn't over, but it was the closest we had ever gotten to where the films directed by women were almost equal to what was directed by men. And this has kind of been a goal of mine, because I felt like we're a queer festival. There are more women making films, but somehow we're missing that. And again, because a lot of distributors back then were still focused on men, and men had access to the money, and therefore the production quality and the mentorship, especially. It was the mentorship. So what I didn't mention when we started was that this year, out of 52 films, right, Steph?
Yeah, 52.
Out of 52 films, we have 28 directed by a woman.
Yeah.
That's great.
Totally.
Yeah. So in our final festival, by chance, we actually finally achieved that goal and surpassed it. And I am very happy that we have been able to do that. But I will say that when I look at the films now, there has been such a transformation, but this is not necessarily happening here. It's happening in Europe, where you're seeing more opportunities for women. The funding is in place. Clearly, there's mentorship going on somewhere. So this is something that we need to still work on in our own country, because we don't have very many films from the US. Yours is one of the few, Cady, that we're showing that's American made. But I wanted to say something about access, because this also relates to your film and something I loved about your documentary. When we talk about access, it is important for each of us, especially those of us who are minorities, to recognize that we're not just here to support our own, that we have to broaden the support, because as a whole, that's how we advance each other and support each other. So I always give the example of when I was working for an ad agency here in Houston, that for a brief moment, we were all minority, and it was not by design. It was just how it filtered with people leaving and coming in. We were all minorities. So when we were looking to hire interns, it was the first time I was in a room where we discussed interns in a way where we were acknowledging who needs this opportunity more than the other person. Not about who are their parents, what is the parent's background, does one of their parents work at Fox in publicity, or, their father's a producer, we need to hire, it wasn't looking at who had the privileged background. We were actually looking at, okay, this person is going to school in publicity and marketing, they're working at Taco Bell. They need this opportunity, because anybody who is working at Taco Bell already knows customer service. That's one of the hardest jobs you can have, is working fast food. We as minorities understood that there is a greater difficulty for people who are having to work and go to school. And by the way, working jobs that don't pay well, these are the people who need these opportunities. So when I look at, Jenny Waldo, she hired a cast of mostly, if not all, women for her feature. Stephanie works with a lot of other Latinos, male and female, on her films, but mostly female. Michelle, you've also been very focused on supporting minorities and women in the filmmaking process. Is there, and your film, again, like you are dealing with straight women, women of color, lesbians, you're interviewing all of them. You are showing this community of women, and that's what I wanted to reflect in this panel, was a community of women, how because I've gotten support from each of you at different points in my own career. So it's like we all help each other. We are a very fortunate community. We have our struggles, of course, being a city far removed from the industry, but here we are, like we're still doing this. Maybe it's more of an observation, so I apologize. I might not have a question attached to that. But is there, I guess, if one of you, if not all of you, if there's something that you can add to the discussion of access where you see or where you've experienced on your own a way that you have successfully helped people gain access to the field. Michelle.
It's a conscious choice. So once you're, in my background, I was, making a lot of films in Houston, and, I would work with crew that, who I knew, and for the most part, it was mostly, I would say more skewed, more men but we did have obviously some women working in the films as well. But because we're such a small community, it's like you work with whoever's available, and willing to do it for the rate, so there wasn't really a conscious decision. It was just more like what I needed to do to get the film made. Right. In 2018, I made a film in LA, and where, just, very obviously like huge film community of a huge pool of people to hire for every single possible position on a film. And I remember telling my producer, Ana Albello, who had just come off of a film where they had a high number of female behind the camera, as well as a director as on, and we had that conversation. I said, I want all female crew if possible. And she said, well, I'll do my best, but, it may not be all female crew, but it'll be majority female crew. And I said, that's great. Let's do the best you can to hire as many female behind the camera as possible. And we had close to 70% female representation on that film. We had, I want to say, we had a significant LGBT representation on camera and behind the camera. And we had, just a really, one of the best crews I ever worked with. Hands down. They really did a phenomenal job and were very professional. And I'd like to say I didn't see a difference between the crews, but I actually did see a difference. I saw, all of these people showing up to work, ready to, to do the job, excited to be there. And got to work with some really incredible people. And that was a conscious decision. That wasn't just like, oh, hey, we'll hire whoever's available and willing to do the rate scenario. It was like, I want to do it. There have been other filmmakers, female filmmakers who had done it, and who had made films with all female crew. And I said, let's do it. Let's try it. And so as someone who is also producing and getting the money together, the financing together, that's something that we have to, really focus on is that gender parity and, making sure that you're, the story, if you're trying to tell stories for women or for the LGBT community, that your crew reflects that story, the people that the stories, the audience you're trying to tell that story for, right? It just makes sense. And but even if it's not, even if it's a story about a straight white dude, still hire people, because we've seen straight white dudes tell their own stories for decades now. It's time to get some varying, perspectives on that, to tell some of those stories. And I'm here for it. I'm excited. And I think that the more that we as storytellers, make that effort, to that conscious decision to diversify, not just the stories that we're telling and the characters that we're including in those stories, but also who we collaborate with behind, to make those stories, the better the stories are going to be. That's just, in my experience, that's just how it will be. And I I've been really blessed that I've been able to have that kind of decision making on some of these films.
Yeah, I think it's really important to make that conscious choice, as Michelle was saying. And I've been watching the Instagram IATSE stories, from with the union strike going on, and I've seen a number of indie producers posting saying, on an indie film, even though you would think because you have less money, you would have less control, it's actually the opposite. And in a way, you kind of have a duty to walk the walk when you're at that level, because people are already sacrificing to take a lower pay, and it's a passion project and all that stuff. So you've got to make sure that you have reasonable work hours, you feed people well, you treat people with respect. And it's interesting because I don't really know why. It certainly wasn't a conversation, but almost 20 years ago when I was at USC, I mean, pretty much every single film that I've ever done has had some kind of sex scene in it. And I remember just even as a student, doing projects with sex scenes and just being really adamant about the respect and about the closed set and about communication and about all these things that now people are talking about with intimacy coordinators and all that stuff. And it was just something that I was like, not on my watch. This is not going to happen. We are going to approach this with, our big girl panties on, and we're going to talk about sex, even though nobody likes, it makes us all uncomfortable. We're going to get through this. And so it's really interesting to me to see how, certain things have changed and developed and come into the atmosphere. I think what Michael K. Williams, rest his soul, before he died, was talking about the trauma counselors on set of I'm blanking on the name of the show.
Wire.
What?
Wire?
No. The show he was just on, they had trauma counselors on, it was the HBO show, the sci-fi movie. It was really beautiful. Anyways, so I just think that there's having that a diverse crew, a diverse background, it just does happen to, like in most cities, it fosters more understanding and communication and friendship and bonds and all of that stuff. And it's interesting because on Acid Test, initially, I was kind of going into it from that, I think they call it like a debt mentality, where it's like, oh, whoever can work on it, I'll take. Like, I'll take whoever it is. And thank you. And I initially was in talks with a different DP, who was male. And we had a phenomenal, great conversations about everything. I mean, I thought it was going to be a great fit. But as it got kind of closer and closer, he got nervous and basically we parted ways. And it was interesting because I had always wanted Kay to be the DP, and there was some miscommunication early on. But I had worked with, some of my closest female friends from, my LA days are female cinematographers. And we had always worked together, and I just always liked that relationship. And so I, kind of called Kay again and was like, can you do this? And she was like, yeah, let's go, and it was just, we had very little time to prep, but it was just such an amazing experience. And our cast and our crew was well over 70% women and people of color. And there were other things where kind of through that, I started being like, oh, okay, it is a choice. And so when I went into post-production, I was like, I want to find a woman sound designer. And because I'm a Texas filmmaker, I want them to be in Texas, and it was hard to find somebody. I mean, we did, but it was hard, And so it just kind of became that self-perpetuating, like you have to ask, you have to push for it. You have to, make it work and find a way to make it work, because without it, you're just perpetuating the same cycle that it's always been, and change isn't going to happen. So,
I mean, I think that's really exciting, though, that you made the effort and that you dug. And I think that's what, I mean, if we leave anything with, it's that not only the responsibility, but the power that every filmmaker has, every, producer has to make that conscious choice to look for people who are dying for that break, who are ready for that access, and to give them that chance. It's also a thrill. I mean, just from my own experience, it is such, I gave a young man, a diverse man, I think he's Filipino, and his chance to DP a short that I did, and he was just so grateful and so excited, and he worked so hard, and he did a great job. And I was so proud to be able to give that, opportunity to him. And it was just a quiet thing, we didn't like put it on a billboard or like make a social media post about it. It was between him and me. We knew. We didn't tell the crew. It was just us. And, and I feel like I've got a friend for life now, He's like so excited and so ready. And he has something to show now that he can say, like, I made this and this was my shot. And, that's my name on that. And so I recommend it not only for the importance that, for our community, for our society, for the filmmaking world, for the future, but just for a person, an individual person, for your own personal joy, I highly recommend it. So I think it's great that you brought it up. And I would say, just for myself, for my own crews, I actually like a really mixed, and I like a 50-50 male-female group, just for me, because whatever their sexual identification is, I feel like there's no one side that's sort of like saying like, this is our story, or we're going to take over. Or, although, being on an all-female crew must be freaking amazing. Just as a woman, I feel like I'd like to have that experience. That sounds pretty great. But the 50-50 crew also, somehow or other, now there's none of those topics are on the table, and we're all just making the movie. Like, that's also just something that I've experienced that I like, that like, okay, everybody's different. Everybody comes from somewhere else. What's the story that we're all getting behind? So I've also liked that as an option to think of, is when you have that opportunity to choose your crew as a way to proceed.
And I think it also is important to, when you're casting, for casting, because, we had on the Never list, we had our lead actress and her mother were Asian American. And that was a conscious decision. When I first read the script, the character did not have an ethnicity assigned to her, and I talked to the screenwriter, and she was like, "Absolutely, I would love to see this character be non-white," but she left it open for me, the director, to sort of interpret that. And I, said, I'm feeling, I feel like this is, we'll audition a variety of young actresses from all various backgrounds and ethnicities. But, I'm personally feeling really strongly like this character, feels to me like she's Asian American. And so we were very focused on trying to cast, a young actress who's from, with an Asian American background. And we were able to do that. So that was a conscious choice that we made. But then at the same time, like I had a couple of my actors who are openly in LGBT, and one of them, I remember before we started filming, wonderful comedic actor named Drew Droege. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Drew's work. He's hilarious, but he and I had a phone call before. I cast him as a principal of this high school. And he called me, and he's like, so do you want him to be gay, or do you want to be, me play it straight? I'm like, I just want you to be a principal. I don't care what your sexual orientation is. Like, he's a principal, just be a principal, and I think that that's kind of important too, to normalize, LGBT characters as in all types of work and employment and roles. They don't have to always be, the drag queen or the fashion designer or the things that you stereotypically think gay people should be, or gay males should be, or women coaches or whatever, soccer coaches. I think you should cast LGBT actors in everyday roles, because we have to see that because that's reality, right? I have friends who are LGBT who have, who are teachers, who are principals, who are lawyers and accountants and just everyday people. And I feel like we need to see more of that on camera too. So, just making decisions like in your casting process, it's going to enhance representation, not fall into these tropes that you often see in film and television. So, that's just another sort of side of the coin that I feel like that we should, it's a conscious choice, right?
I'm gonna jump in there too, because great points all around. And I've been like a proponent of like trying, and really it's because of the communities I've fallen in with to doing filmmaking and videography for the trans communities, for non-binary groups and things like that. It opens your mind when you're sitting down and writing a script. If you're a narrative storyteller, or even if you're not, sometimes it can open your mind. Just not even writing a gender or not even writing an ethnicity, and just thinking of this person as a human being who's going through all these complexities in their life and has this thing they need to achieve, as this thing that they maybe consciously they want, but internally the real thing they need is obviously the climax of the film or whatever. But it's been very liberating from a writing perspective to just sit down and think of this, being and start building up their background. Maybe they grew up in, this environment, or maybe they come from upper class or lower class or whatever, but don't put every single constriction on them, like slowly build it up. And almost like the way they talk now about don't necessarily assign a gender to your child at birth, do that with scripts. You're birthing characters, you're birthing, the story. You don't have to have all of that written down in a little codex when you first begin, because it could be anything. Some of the best movies we've had out there are Alien. Originally that was going to be a male character, a male lead, and Sigourney Weaver killed it. And now she's national treasure. It's like, and there's other stories like that too. Like I mentioned Xena before. They had an episode, they dealt with mythologies, and the mythology of the Lost Mariner was always a white guy, right? But they cast Tony Todd from the Candyman movie as the Lost Mariner because they said he came in, he read, and he killed that role. So it's like, I love that they were open enough to just see this person come in and do this role and be like, oh no, well, we got to hire a white guy, or we got to hire a man, or we got to, it's like, no, think about it. Cast against type. Because a lot of times when we're thinking like, oh, this is this type for this role, like you mentioned with the LGBT community, it's like, why? We're thinking that because we've got preconceived notions of all this thing that was fed to us since we were kids, and Jenny touched on this too. It's like sometimes even us female filmmakers have to confront our own, internalized misogyny and whatnot to come out to the other side and be like, you know what? No, it's not a bad thing to be a female filmmaker. It's not a bad thing to do what some people call chick lit, or to do super butch stuff. I loved in Cady, your documentary, when Lisa's talking about doing Homeland or doing the action scenes. And it's like, it's not about an explosion for her. It's about the characters. And what does that explosion mean to them? Like, what's their reaction to that? You know, I mean, it's always inspirational. And when you take away these barriers that we've put ourselves in and really start to see the world and ourselves in this way, it's exciting because you feel like you can recreate yourself, you know? So
Totally. I think that's such a
We
great
haven't heard from
point.
Stephanie in a while. Stephanie.
Yeah, I see some nodding. I see some nodding. I see some head shaking.
I'm listening. I'm just, man, this is such a treat. Just listening to all these points of view, you know, you think how you think all the time, and that's what's always ruminating in your head, you know, but hearing other people's versions of it, this is great. I feel like a fly on the wall just listening to all this, but if we are, I kind of like, I know that this is, you know, it's a round table or a Zoom talk, but I did want to ask Cady a question. Can I roll like that, you guys? Okay. And this is one of those goofy, you know, if we just finished watching your film and it's a Q&A kind of thing, what did you shoot on? It's not that. But it is like,
What was your budget?
What was your budget? You know,
Oh, I can tell you stories.
Don't answer that.
Yeah, I noticed at the 43 mark that there's a trapper keeper. That anyway, whatever. Those questions. I miss festival life. But is there anything that did not end up in the movie? You know, because that's the thing when you're doing, especially when you're interviewing so many people, and you know, we all know that filmmakers, they're very shy and they don't like to talk about themselves at all. So it ended up at, you know, is there anything that you had to cut that you're like, you know, I wish we could have had time to have that in there, that you'd like to share with us as, you know, insider women directors?
Well, I guess to go back to what everyone was talking about in terms of their kids, both Trudy Bellinger, who is a top commercial director out of the UK, and Deborah Kampmeyer, who is now becoming a very sought after episodic director since Ava DuVernay picked her out of a list of female directors who had their films at Sundance over the years and then just had never been able to break into television. She's now having a wonderful career. And that's really exciting because I've known Deborah for 30 years, and, you know, to see her get this chance now is so great. But, and there's so much I could say about them, but they both talked about strapping their kids to their bodies while they were shooting, just wrapping them up. Trudy talked about hiding her pregnancy. And then suddenly she just showed up on set one day with a baby, and somebody said, "Whose baby is that?" And she says, "It's my baby. That's wrong." Which I thought was just hilarious. And I wish I'd been able to put that in there. But Deborah Kampmeyer is one of the deepest, wisest women, and women who can speaking about the female experience. And I mean, on a spiritual level. And I might just re-edit her whole interview because and put it out there because it's just so fascinating what she has to say. And I want everybody to hear it, you know, talking about the importance of your story, to like where the female story comes from, talking about, you know, the female mythology and Inanna, goddess Inanna. And I was just like, oh my God, this woman needs her own film. So I guess I wish I could share all of that. And every woman had just such vast experience and so much to share. I mean, I wish I'd been able to put in all of Bethany Rooney's story. She came from the Midwest and then ended up as a secretary on St. Elsewhere, worked her way up through production, you know, just grinding, got her first opportunity to direct there. And some of the actors on the set were rough with her, and how she persevered and how she learned to kind of take on the strong identity that she needed to have in order to direct Hollywood television, which is really quite something. Or even Betty Thomas. I mean, my God, what a story that she told. about her life in film, and she's funny as hell. And or Lizzie Borden. Lizzie Borden had some stories about her one of her films that Weinstein. Oh my God, I heard Weinstein stories, and I did not put the Weinstein story specifically in the film because, again, I was not looking to give any of that negativity any more attention than it deserved. And I knew there was another film that was taking on that and other, that story. And I thought, this film needs to serve a different purpose. And that purpose is to say, yep, we know that this can be really rough out here. Some of these people just shutting down women's careers, just stopping them, which happened. And with both Lizzie Borden and Sarah Karnikin, and they've been very vocal and public about that. So I feel okay sharing that. But to say, now look at what these women did despite that. Look how they persevered. Look how they overcame that. Look at the stories. Listen to what they want to say now, because it's so important. We have such a tendency to blow up the trauma as being like, this is so newsworthy, fire in the alley, news at 10. And I was like, no, the panda gave birth is a very important story too. The movie got made. The woman persevered. She did it. And she did not let him Weinstein was not allowed to win. I mean, Sarah Karnikin took all of her savings and bought back the rights to her film and self-distributed it.
Wow.
And I know, right? That is some badass move. She is one impressive lady, multi-Oscar winner for documentaries. And she gets like one line in my movie. One line. She deserves so much more.
So, Cady, what I'm hearing is that you need a TV series where you interview female directors, maybe on public access. Wink, wink,
hey, yeah, there are stories to be told, man. Stories to be told. There's so many of them. I've thought about, donating the footage to Museum in Film and Television, something like that. So in years to come, or at least at the very least, the audio footage, so that other future generations can take this. I interviewed over 50 women, and in a full length 2-hour interviews, and 70 women, including some of the shorter interviews, and it's just really exciting to have that much material and have that kind of for me, the breadth of experience, but also to see that each and every one of them, there was only one of all those women that quit. Only one.
Wow.
Knowing how hard it is, we all know how many obstacles, how difficult it is. And even her, I was meeting with her personally and going don't quit. She's like, honey, I have had it. I am done, So, it isn't for everybody, like Michelle said, and sometimes it can get to you and you've just had enough. But I think who it's for, it is very much for, and they deserve, all the love and support that can be given to them.
Wow, I think that's a great place to conclude. Thank you so much, Cady. It's moments like this that have made this festival magical through the last 25 years. We're not a big festival. We've been volunteer run for most of that time, but we've always managed to find people like you, artists like you, who really have something to give back to the community. So I can't thank you enough for reworking your schedule, for tolerating my tardiness.
See, it wasn't the woman who was late.
For just being a part of all of this. Thank you. And I hope we also made an impression on you that, even in a place like Houston, there are some remarkable people who are, striving to make work that's important to them that they want to share with other people. I'm just so proud of all of you. Thank you so much for being friends of the festival throughout the years. And thank you, Cady, for allowing us to show your film. I just could not imagine it not being in the festival this year. I really could not have imagined. I mean, it's like, we have to show this. So thank you again. Thank you.
Can I say something real quickly, Kristian?
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to thank you because I know you have put your heart and soul into this festival for so many years. And I know you didn't found the festival. I know that was, Sarah Gish and Marianne Luntz and Loris Bradley and Liz Empleton, who started it 25 years ago. But, when it was called the Houston Gay and Lesbian Film Festival, right? And but you at some point took that project on and turned it into QFest and made it, in my opinion, one of the best film festivals that we had to offer here in Houston. And it's why I supported it, because you guys did such a phenomenal job with your programming and just really making it a unique experience for the Houston film community and for the film culture. It really enhanced our film culture here in Houston. So thank you for all your many years of work and dedication to this film festival. And I'm sorry that this will be the last year, but take this as, a job well done from having it last this many years. So thank you
so much. Thank you. I am going to enjoy wherever I go next. It's like, Stephanie and I have been talking about this. I want to move to Italy, and I want to do things that you can only do in Italy, like enjoy life. You can't enjoy life in the U.S. anymore, but in Italy you can still.
Especially Texas.
Especially. So, I mean, yeah, it's been heartbreaking and all of that, but I'm glad that I was able to have this experience today, to have all of you here, even if it's not in person. Because normally, Cady, we would fly you here, at someone's expense, most likely mine, but it would have been worth it. Like, look, this is great. So thank you again. Thank you. I want to thank our panelists, Mel Petersen, Michelle Mower, Jenny Waldo, Stephanie St. Sanchez, and of course you, Cady McClain. Thank you. And please.
Thank you so much for having us.
Of course.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Thank you. It was great meeting you, Cady, and seeing everybody else. So yeah.
Before everyone goes, just as my personal indulgement, because Cady said, and she continued, can each of you tell us, give us a little slice of what you're going forward into? What's the next project? What's the next hurdle for you?
Yes.
Well, I'm trying to make an independent narrative film about a female artist and her two lovers, and it's called Paint Made Flesh. And it actually was a play about a male artist and his two female lovers, and I flipped it, and it has an LGBTQ element to it, where we have a surprise about the lovers that comes into play, which is really fun. And I just think it's really a great script. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get that guy made, it's hard work. But I really love the story. So
that sounds like a QFest film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're
going to have to come back, man.
That's right. So I start production Wednesday on another movie. So that's what I'm doing.
Great.
Yeah, and I've got my debut feature film, Acid Test, premiering at Austin Film Festival next month. So hopefully that will start rolling some festival stuff. And I had a screenplay that got a quarterfinalist in the Nickel Fellowship. So I would love for that to be my second feature. It's a Baytown-based project. So, again, local and all this stuff. But yeah, so I'm excited.
Jenny, what's the name of the other festival? It's Twin Cities?
It's Twin Cities in Minnesota, yeah.
Great. I have friends in Minneapolis.
Oh, yes. Please spread the word. The Minneapolis one we're part of their streaming package. So I think it's open to that region, kind of Minnesota, Wisconsin kind of area. And then Austin's in person. So I'm so excited to see it in a theater with people and get their reactions. So
That's so great. I want to mention that Paint Made Flesh was a quarterfinalist in the Blue Cat screenplay.
oh, cool.
Yeah, so very excited about that. I really love Blue Cat. So shout out to them.
Awesome sauce. Y'all are really getting along there.
Stephanie,
I love it.
Stephanie, what are you doing?
Well, I have it's this thing. It's called Queer Bits. It's set in the dystopian future. There's Barbies involved.
Awesome.
And it's going to be premiering October 15th at this year's Houston Fringe Festival.
Oh, cool.
Great.
And then after that, I'm going to get back to some writing, which is really hard with the kids. I'm going to have to just lock myself up in the treehouse. And, I'm still chasing that feature, you guys. I've always, it's really hard because my attention span is very short. That's, thank you, Sesame Street. Thank you, MTV. That's all I can say to that. But I feel like I want to get that feature out there.
Yeah.
You'll do it. You'll do it.
I believe in you, Stephanie.
String them together.
Yeah.
Can't wait to see Queer Barbie Bits.
Yeah.
And this is another side effect of being having kids is they inspire your creative juices. So I know for a fact that her daughter has been designing narratives with Barbie. So inspiration. But as for me, I'm finally getting back into my writing. Like Steph says, sometimes life hits you. And here in Houston, we've had like a major storm every few years now. So it's really impacted the arts communities. So trying to get back into writing and everything, I've finally written a short film that I'm hoping to turn into a feature. And we're filming it now with resources from the public access. They actually do a workshop called the Filmmakers Project, which is open to producers or anyone in the community, completely free. You submit your script and we help you push you through the path of production, right through writing, through shooting it, and then premiering it at a local theater venue. So, we're really excited about that. And I actually took advantage for my own self just to get back into the stream of writing. And the next hurdle after that is going to be directing again, because I've taken a bit of a break from that. But I'd definitely like to jump in to gain features done. One thing I am proud of with this current project is it stars a older Black woman. It's about Fifth Ward in Houston, and it's set during the freeze that we had here in Houston. So it's kind of a horror movie, socially conscious horror movie that talks about, gentrification and what if monsters were the way they got people killed in minority communities. So, but yeah, it stars an older Black woman, the marvelous Vera Lusk, who's a singer, who's one of our producers here. And I love working with her because she's so professional, but also she is so, she was amazed that we took a chance on her because she's like, when you're older, no one wants to hire you. And I was like, age is a number, girl. I was like, I want to see some old Black superheroes, old Black women superheroes out there saving the world.
Nice.
That's my action film. So
Did you see Fast Color? Did you see Fast Color? Did you see Fast Color?
I have not seen Fast Color. I saw Thunder Force, though, with Melissa McCarthy and Octavia Spencer on Netflix. That's a super good one.
You definitely got to see Fast Color.
It's really nice. Yeah, it's a great film.
It's so great. It's so great. And actually, one of my actresses of the upcoming film was in Fast Color.
Wasn't that? Okay. You got to forward me the link. I need to stream that.
It's on Netflix, I think, but it's or one of the streamers. It's on, you can find it easily, but it's so great.
Fast Color.
And it's multi-generational Black superheroes.
That's what I'm saying,
It's badass. It's totally badass.
And that diversity in front and behind.
I heard they were developing a series out of it, and I really hope that's true because it was so well done as a feature that I think that it could be expanded into a series for sure. So I hope that happens.
Hey, I'd love to do a horror movie franchise, We'll be in there together, Michelle. Thank you all so much. And Cady, I cannot thank you enough. Being an up and coming female filmmaker is hard enough without having the voices of your ancestors and your colleagues, your contemporaries help push you along. And I love what you've done. You've done a service to the world, not just the female community, but the world. So
thank you so much. Thank you so much for having the film at the QFest. I was so excited. I squeaked really loudly when I got that email. I was like, ah! So I'm so happy to be here, and I'm so happy to be on this panel with all of you. It's just such a boost and a bolt of great energy and encouragement. And so thank you so much for your validation of the film. It means a lot.
Thank you.